Hey, y'all. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Unfeigned, the podcast. I'm Jay. I'll be your host. And on today's episode, I want to talk specifically about something that I saw and how it brings up this concept of being purposeful and intentional. So let me start by talking a little bit about this Christian song. There's a Christian song that's very popular, and it's played on the radio. It's sang in a lot of churches, and it's used as a very popular worship song. And when you hear this song, it's a good sounding song. It's catchy, and as the song starts out, you're like, yes, yes, God, like this is great, right? And then it gets to a certain part, and this is the part I want to focus on. And it's called "Reckless Love." You may know it. You may love this song. And it gets to the part after it says, "You've been so, so good to me." It says, "Oh, the overwhelming, never ending, reckless love of God." And then it talks about, what it does. And anyway, it repeats that phrase multiple times. "Oh, the overwhelming, never ending, reckless love of God." Now, before I get into this episode specifically, let me say this. I am not claiming to be perfect at what I'm about to talk about. I'm not even suggesting that everyone should be. We are human. We're going to make mistakes. We're going to miss things. Sometimes we'll catch things. So, yes, we are not going to be perfect in every single situation regarding what I'm about to talk about. However, when we do recognize moments, what do we do with them? And that's what this episode is going to be about. So, that song, "Reckless Love," extremely popular. Everybody seems to love it. Churches use it as their worship songs constantly. And like I said, not perfect by any means. No one is. But when you recognize a moment, you have a choice to make. And there came a point, probably when this song first came out, or maybe shortly after, there came a point where that happened for me. That moment came up in my life, and I had a choice. And as I was listening to that song, and it came up to that part where it says, "Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God." I was like, wait a second. I'm not sure that God's love is reckless. And so I started to listen to the song more, and that was a moment that came up. That was a moment that I recognized. Like I said, I'm not perfect. Nobody is. And so to suggest that every single person, that I and every other person on the planet should scrutinize every little thing. Well, we're not perfect. We obviously we're not capable of doing that with every single little thing. However, when these moments pop up, we have a choice to make. And that's when we should be very purposeful and intentional. And so when that song came on and it was catchy, and I was kind of vibing to it, and then that part came up, "Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God." And I thought, yeah, I just don't think God's love is reckless. I don't think that that line should be in that song. And so anyway, what I did was I went to research. I know what the word reckless means. I mean, I know that. I guess if somebody said define the word reckless, I don't know that I'd be able to give you the exact, Webster's dictionary definition of it, but I could tell you kind of the concept of reckless. But anyway, what I wanted to do is I wanted to go and look it up, because if we are singing a song specifically designed to worship God, then we should probably examine the words of what we're going to say. And like I said, no, I don't do this with every song. I try to as much as I can, but no, I probably have sang songs in church or by myself or listened to them or whatever that probably have some questionable lyrics when it comes to worshiping God. Now, as a side note, if you're saying, well, you should do this with every song, no, that's not true, because the point is this song, one, being a Christian song, supposed to honor God. Two, being a worship song. So it's supposed to be worshipful. And while the rest of the song is actually really good, Like if they would have just changed the one word, if they would have just changed reckless, then the whole song would have been good. But for me, that one word ruins the whole song. Because here's why. Here is what reckless means. Reckless means being careless and showing a lack of concern for the potential consequences of one's actions, often in a way that is dangerous or destructive. Okay. Let me read you what the Oxford languages dictionary definition is. Reckless, without thinking or caring about the consequences of an action. That song is describing God's love as that. That song, calling God's love reckless, is suggesting that God's love is without thinking or caring about the consequences. That song, using reckless to describe God's love, is suggesting that God is being careless and showing a lack of concern for the potential consequences of his actions. So for me, I don't sing that song. I don't listen to that song. I don't boycott it. If they play it in church, I'm not leaving. However, I'm going to worship in my heart during that song. And the funny thing is, sometimes I'll even sing that song, but I'll replace the word. Like they could have said relentless, because God pursues us. God is very relentless in his pursuit, in his love for us. And it could have been a very simple switch of those words. Instead of reckless, say relentless. I mean, there's a number of words that could have been used, but for me, I cannot sing that song or listen to that song and be true to myself, because that moment came up. I was not scrutinizing Christian songs. I was not examining all songs and lyrics of every song I've ever listened to, or that I do listen to now. But it stood out to me because the song was so quote unquote good and catchy. When they got to that part where it called God's love reckless, it just didn't sit well with me, and that was the moment that popped up. And so I wanted to examine that because I didn't want to be judgmental. I didn't want to judge the song because I think the words should be different. But for me, it was inappropriate to use that word because that word contradicts what God is and what God's love is for us. And I know that some people would hear me say these things and think I'm making a big deal out of something that's not a big deal. But I think that's the problem, is we do that a lot. We're not purposeful. We're not intentional. We just do things, right? It's a worship song, so we just sing it. And I think, unfortunately, with this song specifically, it just makes us feel a certain way, and it sounds really good. It sounds really good. And to throw that word reckless in that song, it's like a buzzword, right? It's kind of like it's super trendy, and and it's quote unquote relevant, like we throw that around a lot. And I know that there are people that would tell me that me saying these things is making a big deal out of nothing. But unfortunately, it is a big deal because we're not willing to be intentional and purposeful. We're not willing to examine the things we're doing and saying. Now, let me just say this, because I listen to all genres of music, and I listen to a lot of music. And what I am not saying is that I only listen to certain kind of music with correct words. And I'm not saying that, because I listen to a lot of different music. And some of the music that I listen to is questionable. The lyrics are questionable, and what it talks about is questionable. And I try to justify it by saying, well, it's not that bad. And if we're being honest, like, it's not. There are songs that are a lot worse. And however, I listen to a lot of things. Not all of the things I listen to are extremely wholesome. However, they're not worship songs. They're not claiming to worship God. They're not claiming to honor God. They just have a cool beat, or they have some catchy lyrics, or the composition of the song is real cool and nice. but they're not claiming to worship God. They're not claiming to honor God. They're not claiming to do anything with God with their song. This one is. And honestly, I don't do it as often as probably I should or as well as I should, but I have started to examine other Christian songs that I'll listen to or sing or whatever. It's funny, I'll tell you a little story. So when I was in college, I had a professor, and this is funny, and I didn't think about this until this song came out, and I started to examine this song specifically. And I went back to this moment in college. I had a professor who brought this exact topic up. Now, I was not a Christian when I was in college, right? And so a lot of Christianity and the Bible and God and all this faith and, all those kinds of things, a lot of it didn't make a whole lot of sense. I definitely, bucked the system when it came to that. I rebelled against some of that stuff. But I had this professor who brought this very same thing up. And he actually challenged us as a class. I remember being in class, and he challenged us to do this very thing. He challenged us to listen to the words, to examine the words. And if they're not biblical, if they don't line up biblically and with God's will and God's word, if they don't line up with the heart of God, he challenged us not to sing them. He challenged us not to listen to that song or to sing that song. And he also challenged us to maybe even change the words or the word or whatever it is. And I think when I was in college and I wasn't real concerned with Christian things and Christianity and God and faith and the Bible, I wasn't super concerned with that. So I think it just kind of went in one ear and out the other, like, okay. The funny, ironic thing, though, is my reaction to that, when he challenged us as a class, my reaction to that is probably similar to a lot of people's reactions to what I'm saying about this song. Think about that for a second. I mean, that's kind of ironic. But my reaction to that probably mimics or is very similar to the reaction that most people would have to me saying all these things, because to them it's not a big deal. And so you sing this song. Well, and actually, this phrase has been said to me when I brought this up about this song. The phrase that was said to me was, well, I just like the song. And that's great. I'm not suggesting anyone should not like the song, honestly. It's a very catchy song and it sounds great, but as a worship song, as a Christian song, as a song that's supposed to be honoring God, I don't agree, because it's not biblical. God's love is not reckless. Now, I understand that this song is trying to be quote unquote relevant, that's a whole nother topic. It's so funny that we have to say that, but I understand that the song is trying to connect with the world, and they didn't want the song to sound boring or too like old fashioned or whatever words you want to throw in there. I get that. However, it's not biblical. It is not biblical to say that God's love is reckless. Okay, so what's my point? You might be wondering what this has anything to do with anything other than me just sharing my opinion about a Christian song that I think should have used a different word. Sometimes, and I'm going to give you a glimpse into how my brain works. Sometimes my brain, well, pretty much all the time, my brain moves so fast. I think about a gazillion things all at once, all at the same time, so many moving parts. And yet all at the same time, I can kind of piece things together, and my brain can come up with solutions and outcomes and all this kind of stuff all at the same time while I'm thinking about a gazillion different things. So track with me on this, because I do have a point in all this. And I want to relate this back to relationships, because just like this song was written, I think that when this song was written, I think it was probably, the mindset was, we got to connect and we got to be quote unquote relevant. Whatever it was, it's like, I'm gonna, at the risk of, I don't know. Sometimes I think a lot of Christian songs want to flirt with that line of being in the world, but not of the world. But it looks a little bit like too much in the world. And I don't know. There's, especially with Christian music, like sometimes um, they get real close to that line. I'm not saying this whole song does, but I am saying that with that one word, and when they wrote that in that song, I feel like they wanted to be like with the times, right? Okay. So they accomplished that. But what I think they failed to accomplish was the worshipfulness of the song. Not that it doesn't conjure up feelings, not that it doesn't make us feel a certain way. I get that. And I'm not saying that the whole song is bad. Really. I mean, I liked the song otherwise. And it does make me feel something. And I'm sure that is why people love it so much, because of the feelings it gives them, the emotions it draws out in them. But just like with this song, and why so many people, so many churches, so many people, so many of us listen to this song just because it's just a song, right? Or it sounds good, or it makes me feel a certain way. I just like it. Just like that, that removes all purposefulness and all intentionality, because we end up just doing it because we think or because it makes us feel a certain way. Or we think, oh, it's not a big deal. Like it's not, I mean, really, isn't that big of a deal, right? And that's our mindset with the song. But just like with this song in relationships, there are ways that we relate to each other, right? There are quote unquote ways that that people in a relationship will treat each other, will speak to each other, will behave with each other, will relate to each other, because they don't want, here's my point, they don't want to go against the grain, right? They would rather be funny. How many of you have a partner who is always trying to be funny with you, who's always trying to joke with you, regardless of whether or not it's at your expense? Because, see, in relationships, this does happen where one of the partners feels like it's okay to make fun of their partner, to joke at their expense because it's funny, right? But I don't mean it, right? There's no harm in it. It's no big deal, right? Doesn't that sound like something that we were just talking about? And in relationships, partners act a certain way. That's just one thing, right? But we can probably point out different quote unquote ways that our partners are, right? Or if maybe an ex, or maybe it is a current relationship, or maybe you just had experiences along the way, or know somebody or whatever, where they behave in certain ways towards each other because their mindset is the same, like this song. Well, I have to, this is going to make me sound corny probably, but like, I have to be cool, right? So like, too many times, too often, there is a partner in a relationship, someone in the relationship would rather be cool than kind, right? We used to say that to our kids a lot growing up, that it's better to be kind than cool, right? And so if you are someone who is okay with making people laugh, but it's at your expense, that's not okay. But that's being quote unquote cool, right? Or acting like she doesn't tell me what to do, or he doesn't tell me what to do, right? I don't know what, it's like this false independence or whatever, like acting all tough, right? Because you're trying to be quote unquote cool. But what that does is, just like this song, it doesn't go against the grain. It doesn't require you to be different. It doesn't require you to be better. It doesn't require you to be purposeful or intentional. But if we examine this song and we say, you know what, it isn't biblical to say that God's love is reckless, based on what reckless means. You cannot take a word and just make it mean something you want to fit your agenda. It means something because it means something. And if any part of the definition of that word contradicts who God is, it's unbiblical. You can't say, well, yeah, but the 7 definitions of this word, the 6th one is okay. No, it can't be that. It can't be any part of the definition that contradicts who God is. Otherwise, it's unbiblical. And if we're examining this song and we point out that word and we say, you know what, it is unbiblical, and regardless of how good this song sounds and how it makes me feel or whatever, I'm not going to listen to it. I'm not going to sing it. That's going against the culture. That's going against the grain. In a relationship, someone who says, you know what, I'm not going to joke at my wife's expense or my husband's expense. I'm not going to try to be quote unquote cool at their expense, right? I'm going to purposefully and intentionally protect my wife, my husband, my partner, whatever. That's going against the culture. That's going against the grain. To be purposeful and intentional is going against the grain in general. It's going against the culture. And so, for an example, I don't like when men joke about women's periods. I don't like that. At one point in my life, I did that. A very long time ago, I did that. But when men joke about women's periods, when they say things like, oh, it's that time of the month, and it's jokingly, or it's insinuating something about the way they're acting or their personality or whatever during the time of the month that they get their period. When they say, oh, it's that time of the month, or, oh, they're on their period, or they make jokes about how their woman, their partner, their wife, whatever, their girlfriend, whatever, they're even their friend, whatever, any man to a woman, when they joke about how they get on their period or during that time or whatever, I don't like that. I don't think that is being a real man. When I did that, when I used to do that, I wasn't being a real man. That's weak and insecure. And that's how I was. I'm not that anymore. And I think a real man doesn't do that. I think a real man tries to empathize, tries to understand, tries to be in whatever the situation is, tries to be in it with her. But I think a real man protects her. And so as a side note, men, we got to be better. We have to start acting like real men. Stop joking about women's periods. But why do we do that? Why do we do it, right? It's the same thing as this song. Why do we do it? Because we're trying to be quote unquote cool. We're trying to be relevant. We're trying to be with the times. We're trying to connect, whatever it is. But it's at the expense of the woman, right? Just like this song is at the expense of God, who he is. And so my challenge to all of us, so I'm tying this all in, right? You said, what's the point in all this? I'm tying this all in. My challenge to all of us, to myself, as well as anyone that might be listening to this, my challenge is to be purposeful and intentional about how you are, about how you speak, about how you behave. We are all human, so we're going to make mistakes. It would be silly of me or anyone to think that we will get it right all the time, that we will be perfect. Okay? But my challenge to us is that we try to be as much as we can, as much as possible. And so, like with these songs, if there's a Christian song and it's claiming to honor Christ or glorify Christ or glorify God or worship God, and there's something in the song that may seem off, right? Examine it, right? Check it out. And if it proves to be unbiblical, don't do it. If it's a relationship and man, there's an opportunity that comes up to be hilarious, and it would be funny. That's the thing. It would be funny. Just like this song would be so good of a song if the purpose wasn't to glorify God and worship God, and a situation to be funny comes up, and it would be hilarious if it were not at your partner's expense. So be different, be purposeful, be intentional. Don't do it. Protect your partner. Y'all, I guess what I'm trying to say is my hope, my prayer, my wish for us, especially as men, but women too. My hope is that we will choose being different, regardless if it goes against the grain, regardless if it goes against the culture. My hope is that we will be purposeful and intentional about doing the right things, behaving the right way, protecting our partners appropriately, going against what culture tells us. Culture tells us we should be cool because that's going to gain you approval. And what I'm saying is we should be different and we should be counterculture because it's right. Y'all, I know that all situations in life are unique. I get it. But what I'm speaking specifically about what I talked about in this episode. So again, this is in general. But y'all, I hope we can be better. I hope we can learn from each other. We can grow together as we try to pursue being different. We pursue being counterculture so that we can do the right thing, especially by our partner. We want to do right by our partner. Y'all, thank you so much for listening. Before I sign off here, I just want to mention that I know I mentioned this on a previous episode, but there's some pretty cool things happening. And like I said, my brain works so fast. It goes in so many different directions, and not different, but just thinks about things so quickly and a lot all at the same time. And there's some really cool things that have been happening. And there's one very specific thing that I'm going to be sort of announcing or putting out there very soon. And so I'm super excited about it. I'm still trying to flesh it out, but once I get enough of it, the details put together and all that kind of stuff, I'm gonna put this out there. I'm gonna announce it, and I'm super excited about it. Hope y'all will, when I do announce it, I hope y'all will check it out. But in the meantime, I want to connect with y'all like always. Email me, unfeignedpodcast@gmail.com, or send me a message on Instagram, Facebook, or LinkedIn. Until next time, see you then. Again, thanks for listening. I appreciate y'all so much.